On this episode of Chatty Chit Chats with ChattyMuva, I'm going to be taking you into a therapy session with me. We're going to go through what a session would look like because, there's a lot of taboo about going to therapy and what that looks like for a lot of people. And there's a lot of people in my community, the Black community, that just don't believe in it or don't see the purpose or don't really understand it or even have fear around it, which stops them from going. And another taboo is that you have to have issues to be going to therapy or something is wrong with you, to be going to therapy. No, therapy is literally, there's a lot of people that use therapy that don't have any real deep issues, but it's a way to, debrief about your life, discuss the things that are going on with you, figure out changes and ways to do that with somebody. And a lot of times, therapy may not be necessary for somebody who has a really, really good support system. They may feel that they don't need that. However, it is nice to have that outside perspective because sometimes, we continue cycles because of what we're used to, and we stay around the same people, and our support system is the same people that a lot of people are still healing, and they don't even know what advice to be giving, or they don't really know how to help you heal or cope. And you may find new, more healthy ways to cope with whatever it is that you're going through, or to just go through your life. Nobody's perfect. We all have issues at one time or another in our life. Nobody's ever just 100% happy. So we're going to take you through a therapy session, what it would look like, questions that therapists would most likely ask, in your first session, standout questions that you should ask your therapist, standout questions that you should ask your therapist for more clarity on if they're the right therapist for you. So let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing is there's a lot of very important questions, and I think it's more important to look at the questions that you're going to ask when looking for your therapist, because the first step is to find a therapist, obviously. A lot of us use Google, word of mouth, different ways to find therapists. There's so many different ways, but now when you get that therapist, how do you know that that therapist or counselor is going to be right for you? So there's like a lot of really good questions. We're going to go through some of them. I've personally experienced therapy when COVID was going on. During COVID, I just felt so overwhelmed with things, and the kids were out of daycare, and it was just a lot. We couldn't really go out. We couldn't do a lot. We were just kind of trapped at home in this space of the unknown and like fear, basically. And during that time, just feeling overwhelmed. And even though I have a good support system, my spouse is amazing. I could talk to her literally about anything. I do have lots of sisters and family members that I could reach out to. However, I'm the type of person that for me, it's really hard to burden. I feel like I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to put my drama, issues, whatever it is, my sadness, my negative energy on anybody else. And it's something that I struggle with a lot. So for me, therapy was the best thing. Because at some point it's just like, okay, I don't want to, it causes more stress for me and adds more to what I'm already dealing with, knowing that, okay, I'm putting this on you. So knowing that it was a stranger was definitely appealing for me. Graduating social work taught me more of the importance of, therapy and like why it's important to reach out and just have like an outsider perspective on your life and kind of like input, and just somebody that you could lay it out all on, you know what I mean? Like just somebody you could lay it all on that just doesn't really know you, and you don't have to feel any kind of guilt for putting it on them. This is their profession. They get paid for this. Okay. So the standout questions you want to ask your therapist for clarity as far as like, are you right for me? I think one of the most important questions is, and the first question should be is, after obviously explaining what you need your therapy for, and some people don't even have like words to actually put on why they need therapy. They just feel like they need it, and that's okay. You need to ask your therapist, have you ever worked with individuals like me? Have you ever worked with somebody who looks like me? Have you ever worked with somebody who's in my specific situation? And what did that look like for you? The next question that you could ask them is, and that's obviously important because you want to make sure that, some of us as Black people are not comfortable working with white people because we feel like they don't understand our experience, or it just wouldn't hit as good. You know what I mean? We just feel like it's just, sometimes we feel like they're not going to be able to relate to what we're saying or the way that we do things, if that makes sense. The next question I think that's important is to ask would be, what modalities are you trained in? Meaning, what kind of evidence-based therapy are you working from in order to help me? So for those of you who are not sure what that means, it's just like there's different types of therapy types that help people. There's cognitive behavioral therapy. There's different therapies that are effective for different things, and they know more about it than we would, but it is good to ask that question to make sure that they, whatever they say, you can go Google it and you can check to see, okay, this sounds like this treatment could work for me, or, whatever modality or whatever therapy that they're working from is going to be appropriate for you and your needs. So definitely you could actually read up on the different modalities and treatments that therapists offer before you actually start looking for your therapist, so that you would kind of already have that. So when you ask them and they give you the answer, you kind of know, okay, I've heard that before, and you can kind of validate their experience and their work. A lot of times therapists use the terms trauma informed. It doesn't mean that their approach is going to work for you. So you need to ask them what their understanding of trauma is, whether that be sexual, physical, whatever it is. Your interpretation of how an event impacted you, like poverty, sexual harassment, racism, they all can be trauma. So you need to make sure that the therapist that you're using understands that those things could be trauma, or whatever it is that you are in need of, So ask for clarity to be sure that they're appropriate to work with as far as what their approach is when it comes to trauma, if that's what you need. Another question is, I think once you get past those questions and you feel comfortable, I think you can start asking more questions, such as, like, if you're a culture-based person, maybe you are worried about your cultural differences with your therapist. Maybe they're not from the same culture. You can ask them, are you understanding of cultural differences? Have you worked with, have you done work to confront your own biases? Because we all have them. We all have them. We all have them. As much as you may think you don't have them, we have them deep down inside, subconsciously, stuff like that. And we need to work on them. We need to work on them. We all have different stereotypes and things we put in our head based off of just what we've learned in our environment and in this society. So it's important with therapists, they're humans, right? So these are questions that we ask. And I mean, for the most part, every single therapist is going to say that they have done work to confront their biases, but it's important to know what kind of work. I think it's okay to put your therapist on the spot, because you're hiring them for a service when it comes to your mental health. And this is really important. And you want to feel safe and comfortable in the space that you're sharing your most vulnerable information. I think it's important to ask a question like, how do I share with you if I don't feel that this therapy treatment or whatever your method is working? How do I feel if I don't feel connected with you? How do I share that with you? And just kind of like what that communication would look like. Is it okay for me to just blurt out that this isn't working for you? And especially if you're the type of person that's kind of like me, like if something is not working in that type of setting, I'll just cancel my next appointment. You won't see me. But sometimes if you can communicate, sorry, I'm stuttering. If you can communicate that with your therapist, that you're not feeling that, anything is working, which you should be very honest, they may change what they're doing and try something else. They have lots of different ways that they do things. So I think that it's important to ask, how do I share that? And just so that they know that you're looking out for these things. You can ask questions like, how would I know it's time to end therapy? How do you view my progress? Like, how would you share with me that you feel that I'm progressing in this therapy work that we're doing together? How would you tell me that? Is it a grading scale? Like, how does this work? If you're ever unsure of why you're being asked a specific question on something, you can ask, why is it being discussed? Because sometimes therapists will you'll say something and then they go to another topic about your childhood. And you're like, what does my dad have to do with this? Ask the question, because a lot of times there's a reason for what they're doing. And it would be, it would be beneficial for you to actually know why they're asking these questions, because a lot of times they're just trying to connect the dots. They always say whatever, your childhood was and your childhood experience was plays out in your adulthood in different ways. So maybe that's why they're asking. But if you're unsure of anything that they're discussing or asking you, don't be afraid to ask why. Now, I think let's move on from what we would ask the therapist. You can also Google for more questions like, what can I ask my therapist? For if you need something more specific, you could Google that and double check. But going into a therapy session, questions that your therapist would most likely ask you on a first session would probably be, what made you consider therapy now? Like, just so that they could have a fair idea of what's going on in your life at this time and what could make you need their service. The next question could be, how or have you ever been in counseling or therapy before? And this is just to gauge if, your understanding of what the environment is like and things like that. And also just to kind of address any questions or concerns you may have, probably. They also want to know, if you've been in counseling or therapy, because they want to know what has worked for you and what hasn't worked for you in those sessions. Maybe so that they could continue with that style or, stay away from the style that didn't work. Another question that they'll probably ask you is, what are you looking for in a therapist or a counselor? And if you have any questions for them. I think those would be some of the most basic questions that they would ask. And the difference between a counselor and a therapist is mental health counselors are individuals who help others navigate and take care of their mental health, basically their mental well-being. Therapists are usually certified health professionals that can provide therapy services. So they're similar, but they're different. I think therapy is a step above counseling, but they're both very helpful and very, very useful in life. I think that therapists, if you go see a therapist, it's more that something has caused distress and it's interfering with your life. You literally can't focus. And I think that counseling is more of just kind of like just helping you figure out your emotions and how you can make changes to have a better life versus like a specific issue. So I think it's more of like a coach. That's kind of what I look at it as. But yeah, I just really wanted to come and kind of touch on the whole therapy topic, because I know in my family, I don't think I've ever heard anybody in my family ever say they've even considered, thought about, or have ever went to therapy. I feel like I'm one of the only people in my family that has ever done therapy, other than one of my sisters. I think she recently told me that she did some family therapy with her girls and stuff like that. She said that it was a really good experience for her and for her children. I think that's another thing, is making sure that your children know that this is an avenue that's available to them. Because, like I said, even for us as adults, going to talk to our loved ones about things that bother us sometimes doesn't feel comfortable, doesn't feel safe, just makes you feel guilty or makes you feel like a burden. And so having that extra outlet outside of yourself, or even just out of fear, having that extra outlet is amazing and really important. And there's so many ways to do it. There's hotlines. If you go on Google, you can find international hotlines for free therapies. There's a lot of different counseling hotlines. There's a lot of free ones. I'm going to try to link something in the comments in my YouTube. So if you're listening to this from Apple Podcasts, you'd have to probably go over to my YouTube if you're really in need of this type of link. But I will definitely have something linked down below in the description box on my YouTube channel under this video. For those of you who don't know, I do have a YouTube playlist with these episodes over there for people who want to do commentary or don't have Apple Podcast. So definitely check it out. I'll definitely make sure that I link the phone number. There's toll-free phone numbers. There's also therapy. Like I said, I did therapy in COVID. And when I did therapy for me was an online video session, because like I said, there was no contact. And it wasn't bad. It was a 40-minute session. And I definitely wish I had did more. I just didn't do more at that time. And I want to have like a consistent therapist that I just that's my person, and they know me, and over time they learn to analyze my entire life. That's what I'm looking for. There's a show called Couples Therapy out right now. It's on Crave. I'm sure you can find it in other places. It's called Couples Therapy. There's a therapist named Orna. She is an amazing therapist. I think she's actually a psychoanalyst. I'm not 100% sure, but she's absolutely amazing. And I just want somebody to dissect my life like that. Literally, I feel like it's so amazing just like looking into yourself and being able to analyze where you've come from to where you are, and just everything you've been through, and just where you stand now and how you've, been able to cope and be here. I think it's amazing. And I think therapy belongs to everybody. It could belong to everybody. It should belong to everybody. I don't think it should be as taboo as it is anymore. Definitely doesn't mean anything is wrong with you. I think it's a way of making sure that your well-being is being taken care of, that you have a place to land when things don't feel good, or, just you need some organization in your life. And so that's basically what I wanted to come and talk about today. If you stuck with me through this whole episode, you're a rock. You're amazing. I hope that you're good. Love and light to you. Until the next episode. Bye.